to such a degree that I had to wear a sweatshirt. But it is. And that's okay, because it's a new look, it's a fresh look, it's autumn, it's fall. We are falling into cooler weather. Leaves are falling off the tree. Elderly are falling over curbs. This is what happens during the fall. And of course, on Stine Has Issues, Wyatt is falling all over himself trying to find the proper button. But this is the majesty, this is the joy of this show, that no matter how long, how far, how often we fall, we are always getting right back up on our feet, brushing ourselves off, and then a boulder hits us. It's kind of like Roadrunner and Coyote, but it's with live people. But it doesn't really count until the show starts. Then you can start keeping score for how much we screw up. And you might even learn something along the way. I doubt it. We'll find out. Before we do, though, let's play some music, just so you can feel at home. Whitey? Hello, it's me, God's comic Brad Stine, and it is Stine Has Issues, where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. I am a comedian, actor, author, bon vivant, renaissance man, carny, and my son Wyatt is my producer and my sidekick. Wyatt, are you kicking my sides tonight, or are you just going to play it cool?
I think I'll go for more of a jab this week.
Nice. That's different. That's not something you're normally doing. What's causing you this new construct, son?
What's causing this?
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to take a jab at you, literally.
Okay. Well, listen, I don't mind. That's fine. For those of you who are brand new to the podcast, Stine Has Issues, I am a comedian, but I also slapped together a little podcast, and I didn't do it on purpose, by the way. You have to blame every single person that you're about to see show up on this thread saying hi and whatever and who's watching and blah, 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 because they're the ones that funded this. Wyatt, I was desperate. I thought to myself, if I said, guys, if I have anything worth saying, let's make it go forward. Let God move in your spirit, and we will make this thing a reality. But I assumed they'd all just bail, Wyatt. Wouldn't you, if it was just you and me?
Oh, trust me, if there wasn't a fat paycheck at the beginning of each month, I'd be high gone from here at this point.
Wyatt, your definition of fat paycheck, I think...
It's subjective, I'll admit, but hey, it's better than literally nothing.
Yeah. Well, listen, I got to tell you something. So I went to my page, Brad Stine.
And you found the podcast and everything went well?
No, of course not. No. That's the beauty.
For you for the umpteenth billionth time.
Well, that's my point. Is that once again, it's just like nothing's happening.
Okay.
And
so you don't see anything on that iPad that could even potentially look like your stream.
Well, you know what? I think I found it somewhere else.
You found it?
I had to import it into the thing.
So you found the thing though that you can never find.
There it is. It wasn't there. So, folks, if you are new to the podcast, my son is the producer. He is the director. He is the camera switcher. He is the sidekick. He is helps me in research. He puts in all the stuff. But he also screws up a lot, and when he does, he'll blame me. Now, if you can see, I don't have a button.
I do not mess up as often as you are blamed for mess-ups, okay?
That's true. That's a good point. Well, listen, I got to tell you guys, so this is going to be a big show tonight. We got a lot to talk about. For those who, again, are new to this podcast, we start out light. We try to make things light, and the reason is because the world is going to hell. It's just falling apart. It's in flames. Wheels will come off, and then somebody took the wheels and lit them on fire. They just can't let it go. Why? What is the deal with the apocalypse coming on right when our career is starting to blossom? That's when they said, listen, hope you're doing well. Glad everybody loves your podcast, but it is the end of the world. Why? Is that ironic?
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
There's no way of telling if this is just a massive coincidence or a sign that somehow this podcast is directly responsible for that. Unless we just shut it all down and see if the problems just magically go away.
Right, if we shut it all down, though, people will be weeping and gnashing their teeth because this is so
like
important.
What, all 80 people in our
Listen,
audience?
I want to tell you something right now. Do you know who Goertzel Villanueva is?
No, but I like the name.
Well, Goertzel Villanueva just sent 50 stars, and guess who is number 2 on my list? Because I was going to say number 1 and give Goertzel a lot of credit, and then I saw, of course, Nick Kress is watching. But Carrie Tudor is watching with him, and I knew they were going to get together eventually because you could tell a little flicker of flame was there happening between them on their thread.
Well,
Did you ever notice that?
Not really. I pay more attention to the YouTube side of things nowadays.
All right.
And the number 1 person on YouTube is, guess what?
Who?
T.W. Smith.
He's still back. I think he kind of controls the
You
camera.
would have thought the first 2 or so times he's been here would have been enough of a clue. Although maybe in some other podcasts more worth listening to.
Why? Listen, he's like taking control of that side of the fence, the YouTube side. So God bless him for that.
I mean, YouTube, we have like 4 people on YouTube at this point. Usually it takes us like 20 minutes into the show for that to happen.
I know. Do you know that we have about 23,000 subscribers now on YouTube, and it's growing?
I didn't know that. That's a big number.
That's a big number. We're heading to 100,000. That's what we're shooting for. I put out a 2016 documentary over the week called Boycott This, and it really was just talking about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, trying to find out how people saw this, what they thought about it. It's so complicated, it's so difficult, and it's so terrible, the deaths and the destruction that has come out of this terrible situation, that I just didn't want to assume that I understood anything, because it's easy when you get a point of view. As a Christian, you're always told you got to defend Israel and you have to protect it because, of course, Jesus was a Jew, and not to mention that Christianity came from the Messiah lineage of Judaism. So we have a lot in common. But I can't just jump on board and not educate myself and make sure the best I can that I understand what's going on. And listen, if somebody's making a mistake, Israel ain't perfect. And if they're making mistakes or doing something, then it needs to be called out like anybody, like the United States should be called out when it's doing mistakes. So I was trying to find a way to look at it, but I just saw so many things that were not consistent, not fair, certainly not weighed justly when it came to UN resolutions and so forth against Israel compared to others. It's like I had to talk about that because it was absurd. And it reminds me of something, Wyatt. Well, before we get there, because it starts getting heavier again, let's go say hi to some folks first. What do you think? Just to make it happy. Marsha Pointer reads here. Hi, Brad and White and everybody. Carrie Tudor. Hey, Brad White and all peeps. Carol Jewell. Good evening from Virginia. Wendy Jarko. Hi, Brad. Love your show. Me too. I'm starting to like it even more because Wyatt's figuring some stuff out, and I never thought that would happen.
So T.W. Smith on YouTube wants you to read his Facebook comment.
Did he put one on?
He
did.
Yeah.
Hey, White, here's what it says. It says this. T.W. Smith, Brad, I know you're trying to build your YouTube audience. I know your pain. I started uploading my original Christian songs on YouTube a couple months ago and only have 22 subscribers. I've been there. Don't be whining to me. Me and my son have sat here looking like idiots. For how long have we been looking like idiots, White?
Like what, 3 years?
3 years of idiotless lookingness. So, relax.
I just figured out how the buttons work.
I know. My goal is to get to 40 subscribers by the end of the month. Well, maybe you will. And why not shoot high? He's shooting for the stars, so he wants 40 subscribers. Carrie Tudor said, love your interview with Gary Chapman. You know what? I just got a text from Gary today, and he said, I am getting so many wonderful compliments from our interview on your podcast, so I just want to say thank you. And I'm like, dude, you did all the work. You revealed yourself to people, and I said, your crucifixion has healed many, so God bless you for what you've done and your courage and just your honesty and your rawness to say, this was a hard thing, and this is what happened, but God got me through it. Well, everybody needs that kind of encouragement. I know that Wyatt needs encouragement all the time because, again, when you fail regularly, you need somebody to lift you up. Why? That's what I try to do on a regular basis. Karen Boyd said, welcome to God's Comic. Brad Stine Has Issues, of course. Let's see. Tammy Oaks. Hello, first time here. See, I was going to say I'm not familiar with Tammy Oaks. We'll come to find out she is a first timer. So White, I'm getting so good at this that I can tell if somebody's a first timer before I even say that they're a first timer because she said she's a first timer, which she said for the first time Just now. Last time I was listening and watching with my husband. Well, good for you, and I'm glad you have a husband and that you're still together, that my podcast didn't separate you. It shattered many relationships. Ched said hello. Beth Franklin, Kentucky here, Brad and Wyatt. Let's see. Jim Bronoff, sorry to miss last week. Glad to be back. Hope it's all good with you. Good to have you, Jim. Samantha Schneider, hello. Karen Boyd, where's the mustache? Mustache had to go for the movie, Karen, that I just did 2 weeks ago in California. I sent a little, matter of fact, you showed up. I did a quick Facebook, hey, I'm here doing a movie. And you even said, hi, Brad. It was a Facebook Live. And you said, hi, it was a Saturday. Anyways, it was a movie I shot, so I had to shave it off. That's what happened to it. Have you tried unplugging it and plugging it back in? I don't know what that means. Stan Stinson, welcome to Brad Stine Does the Apocalypse. Exactly. Nick Kress, Karen Boyd, no more Brad, Hulk Hogan, Stein. Chris Figures, first time on the podcast, but I've been following your gut. He says your jokes have been on point so far, but it's not going to last. Just ask my son. Louis Leone, it's the end of the world as we know it. Clovis Jones. Why, who sang that song?
R.E.M.
You got it. Clovis Jones, sorry I'm late. I had a fire in the fire pit. That's what you're supposed to have in your fire pit, is a fire. You don't want to flood in the fire pit. It'd be ridiculous.
I mean, look. A fire pit without fire is just a pit.
Yes, I know, exactly.
Like, what exactly can you do with one of those? You know?
Nick Kress says, thank you for calling tech support. How may I abuse you? Forrest Bainey, Wyatt. What's the one thing that he's got going for him that nobody else on the earth does?
Awesome name.
Awesome name. Hello, Brad and Wyatt. Aka Nick Kress. Aka Karen Boyd. Aka Danny Herring. Danny's in a bunker. Leave her alone. Aka Maria. 4 names. Aka Curry Tudor. Aka. Let's see. The CD tray in your computer is not a cup holder. That's Nick Kress. Who in the heck is perfect? Says Chris Veckers. Let's see. I'm married. Only flicker for my husband. I know you joke and love my husband very much. He and my blessing from Colorado. That's of course Carrie's coming back. Aaron Oaks. Glad you are here, sweetie. This is the highlight of my week. Wyatt. When we are the highlight of someone's week, what does that say about their life?
I'm so sorry. I promise we'll try to make it better for you.
No kidding. Hey, Clovis Jones says, pray for our nation in Israel. I am my friend. Let's see. Louis Leone, he's right all the time. He studies more than I do. Let's see. Paula Faye Marie Rauchi. How many names does she have? That's right.
4.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
No, well, way to count. Hello from Virginia, helping hounds of Texas. Helping hounds. Interesting. Plenty flowers. You are not idiots. Thank you. Let's see. Chris Vickers. I'm a writer with 5 books under my belt, trying to gain an audience with it since 2012. I feel you there. See, it's hard, isn't it? So, Wyatt, we're not incompetent. Everybody sucks at this.
If everyone's incompetent, no one is.
Oh, that's a good point. Hey, guess who's here? Larry Boise. Howdy from extreme northern New York. Donald Judson. Hell from Austin. Drove through Nashville last week. Well, good for you. You should have stopped and said hi. I would have had some coffee on the pot for you. Let me see. Jet Wudon Jayona, watching from the Philippines. Holy smoke, got the Philippines watching as well, son. Chris Wade's coming from San Dimas. Brad Markle's Ubering. Paula Faye Marie Rauchi's love my fire pit. Brad Markell says, Uber this, Brad. Greg Cox, Ronnie Sexton, Bob Orr, Clovis Jones, thanks for the call for the fire pit. John Alaskanami, Nigerian here. Wow. So here we go. We got people from Nigeria. Well, listen, like I said, guys, I always like to start out with something fun, something clever. We got a great guest on tonight. Great guest, Dwight. You remember him. Do you remember him? You remember our guest?
No.
You don't. Well, you should, because
No, I don't know. I wasn't even in the room for that.
You weren't, but he was amazing, and you're gonna love him. He's a historian on America, and he's got some amazing things to talk about. And you guys are gonna dig him, and you're gonna want to get his book. But son, last week we were talking about Lowe's. Now, again, for the new viewers, listeners, whatever the case may be, I guess that's all you can do is view and listen, unless we have a Braille version. That I'm not aware of.
I don't know about that, but we do have a sign language version for the Spotify.
Oh, nice. Well, anyways, for whichever version you're watching the podcast, Wyatt has a part-time job at Lowe's, and he has a part-time job at Lowe's, not because he's fond of sinks and appliances, but because I don't pay him very well because my podcast is just running on fumes.
It's literally two guys in an attic.
Yes!
What else are you expecting out of us?
Oh, my Lord. And yet, we're still hanging in there some because we love the people. But anyways, he works at Lowe's part-time, and he always has some amazing stories. A lot of you don't know this, but Lowe's is more... I think their new motto was, we're more than just wrenches. They now have weddings. They now have date nights. They now have prom nights. And we're shooting for funerals where you build your own casket, get in, and then off yourself. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with that version. But Wyatt, anything new happen at Lowe's? Any updates that we can keep in?
So, as you may be aware...
Oh, I'm so happy when Lowe's... See, I ask not knowing, guys. And then it always is some crazy thing that makes me happy because I can't write this stuff myself. Lowe's does all the work.
It's the holidays right now, specifically October, which means it's what holiday do you think is associated mostly with October?
Gourd and Pumpkin Display Day.
What day is that on? Because I don't remember that one. We got to get our decorations up then.
Ooh. You don't mean
Halloween. Okay, so the first thing I would like to tell you all is we got our Halloween decorations in July. I'm not kidding.
That's so ridiculous.
What's even more ridiculous is that we got our Christmas decorations in September. And now, they've replaced the Halloween decorations.
They've replaced them?
Yeah. The literal month of the holiday, we got rid of the Halloween decorations to make room for Christmas.
So you have no Halloween decorations?
We have, like, 2 things that didn't sell, and that's it.
And you sold everything out?
Sure. Not really. They just stopped selling it.
Oh.
It's Christmas. But out of all the Halloween decorations we had, there was one specific one. It was this 12-foot scarecrow guy with like a scythe and everything. Looked pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I found out from my boss that decoration is effectively a collector's edition. Oh. Because Lowe's, the company, makes them.
Oh.
And next year, we're going to have a different one. Not that one. That was a one-time deal.
Okay.
They have a literal warehouse factory. And all they do is design and build that Halloween decoration. And then next year, it'll be the next one. In fact, they've probably already started planning the next one.
And they sell them?
Yeah, and they sell them.
Okay.
People were calling into the store at 6 a.m. to see if they were still in stock.
So they hit the mother lode with the giant scarecrow.
Listen. I'm not going to say I understand it, because it's the most completely baffling thing I've ever seen. Nobody shops at Lowe's to get Halloween decorations.
Clearly they do, Wyatt, if they sold out.
But this thing is selling online for like $2,000. Because again, it's a collector's thing. Yeah. It's a one and done deal. The place that they build it in has its own wind tunnel and a water tank. This thing is like, apparently it's the only thing of quality we sell.
Wow.
It is absolutely ridiculous.
It is.
And the moment, the actual nanosecond we make it to the month where you'd want to buy it, out the door, gone, never again.
Good. Well, that's crazy, and that is funny. I thought it'd be more funny if the Christmas decorations were in competition with the Halloween, and Santa was like fighting with his reindeer, and he's shooting out, and here comes Scarecrow with the scythe, and then we got
so many things I need to talk about now. First of all, if you've actually seen the Christmas decorations, we have these Santa Claus-like statues.
Yeah.
And they're animated, like the mouth moves.
Okay.
And I swear to you, they should be with the Halloween decorations.
Wyatt, just saying that creeps me out.
No. Yeah. Imagine not knowing they did that, looking at them as they do it, and going a double take as you think you're slowly losing your mind.
Oh, my Lord.
Also, my second point.
Yeah.
Scythe?
I don't know. What did you call it?
Scythe.
Scythe.
You know, the way it's pronounced?
Well, if it was fake, would that be scythe fiction?
Yeah, we're moving on.
Okay. I do want to say something to you, though, about, it reminds me of something about business and in general. So last night, I got home from a weekend performance. Now, I first worked Friday night and Saturday all day at the Southern Evangelical Seminary Conference for Apologetics. So I got to work with Frank Turek, who's been a guest that we've had. Hugh Ross, an astrophysicist, was there. And why, you know, when people look at me, they often ask me a couple questions. One, how did you get into comedy? And two, are you an astrophysicist because you seem so brilliant? Those are the two things I have to constantly parry around.
Oh, really? Yeah. Those questions are what you're constantly just like...
Yeah.
Oh, like, are you sick of having to answer, like, I'm not an actual, like, NASA rocket scientist with an intelligent brain?
Wyatt, it is so annoying. Are you a genius? Are you brilliant? How do you, calculate black holes and so forth with you?
How does a man of your intelligence survive living amongst a sea of imbeciles?
Well, it's not easy when the rest of you can't keep up. Not easy. But I do the best I can, son, because it's my podcast, and if that, maybe that's what drives people here, Wyatt, my insights.
Yes,
my
that
intellect.
must be it, because it's clearly not your humor.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I will say this, though. So I was there for 2 days, and then I went down and this is in South Carolina, and then I went down and performed at a church service, actually, Sunday service. So the Sunday service is a little different. There's comedy, but also a lot of teaching, a lot of inspiration, right? All right, so then I drive all the way back to Charlotte, North Carolina. And I got to tell you something about Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, I was never an anti-Charlotte, North Carolina guy, because I like North Carolina. I think it's a pretty state. It's nice people. They're the only state I know of that named one of their freeways after an evangelist.
That's interesting. So you said that you didn't hate it. What changed that?
Well, okay, I don't hate Charlotte, I guess. But in the airport, when I went to get my car, now I'm a Hertz Gold member, which means the only reason I do that is because it allows me not to have to wait in line to pick up my car, because I travel so much. I get off the plane, I get my thing, I hit to Hertz, I go right to the parking lot, grab my car, go. It's just so convenient, so helpful. So I went to get a Hertz rental car at Charlotte, and they said, yeah, you want it 3 days? It's going to be $850. I go, what? $850? I'm a President's Circle Gold member. What the heck? So I went ahead and go online and said, I got to find a cheaper version. So I got one for $450. I go, see, I got to do the $450. Now I know this is going to suck because I'm not going to have my gold service, but I'm just going to have to put it, suck it up. I thought I was getting Hertz, by the way, because it said a couple different car services were part of this thing, but it ended up I did Avis. Anyways, so I get on Avis. I think, Brad, this is a time for you to learn patience, learn to be cool. And I knew I might have a little bit of a line. It's like, just get your mind set now. That line, Wyatt, was almost to the back of the day. It literally was 45 minutes for me to get my car in Avis. Literally 45 minutes. Okay, but I accept it. Get in, finally get out of there, do my thing, right? So when I come back to leave, right, last night, it was backed up, just returning the cars. I don't know what it is about that airport. It was backed up. People were like leaving their cars right on the sides of the road. It was like the apocalypse where people would be getting raptured. Just things were everywhere. So I finally get it out and leave it and go. Okay, I get in, get through everything. And I'm looking at, now I was on Southwest. Southwest has no amenities. They don't have any club memberships and stuff. And the reason I do those is because you have hours in between. You can sit down. They have good food to eat. You can have a coffee, whatever, drink that you prefer. You can do your computer. So it's very helpful for people that travel all the time. Well, I didn't have any access, and their hub is American. So all the American clubs I noticed were to capacity. I said, if you're an American guy that wants to go in there and rest, you can't even get in. But I did have a Centurion Club, which is American Express. I said, they have one. Oh, good. I can be cool for a little bit. They said, oh, no, it's to capacity. We're going to have to put you on a waiting list. And I'm like going, what is it? This place sucks. Nothing was open. Everything was packed up. It was like incompetence began to rule Charlotte. And it's like, I got to go back on Friday to Charlotte to do another show. I didn't know I was going back to Charlotte. That's where I'm going.
Wait, really? Man, that hurts just thinking about.
Yeah. So guess what? So anyways, that's not even the story I wanted.
Oh, that wasn't even the end?
I just wanted to complain about Charlotte.
That was just you angrily yelling at some, like...
At Charlotte! Airport!
Dang you, Charlotte!
Yeah. But here's what happened. So anyways, when I got home, and the plane was late, by the way, hour something late. I get home.
Okay, is there anything nice you would like to say about this airport?
Well, this was different. I mean, it was, whatever. I don't know. Everything was backed up in Charlotte. I don't know what's up with Charlotte.
Did Charlotte do anything nice for you?
Nothing! Zippity-doo-dah. Zippolius.
You hear that, everyone listening in Charlotte? Nothing good about your city.
Charlotte is my Lowe's, Wyatt.
Oh, God. Oh, okay. Now, those are some heavy words. Are you sure you want to stick with that?
Fighting words, aren't they?
You can't go back on it now.
I know. Right? Well, anyways, let's see. I'll be there on Friday. Let's see if it was an anomaly or if that place has just turned into a horrible place to go do your business. But here's what I wanted to say. So I get home, finally. And when I got home, what you doing, son?
Nothing. It's just things about to die, and when it dies, it really screams and then makes you know.
Okay.
So I just don't want that to happen.
Okay.
But continue living the illusion and everything.
Wyatt came up and took something off my desk and it frightened me. Anyways, so here's what I was going to say, guys. All right. So I get home and I take an Uber. Take an Uber, which I've done a million times, and they're pretty convenient. They're usually there in a few minutes, right? All right. So I got my bag, came pretty quick. I'm heading to the Uberville. I put in my little thing, diddly-da. Here's somebody's picking you up either in 4 minutes, diddly-da. I'm walking a little bit, trying to get to the place. I look over, and it said, your driver is canceled, but this other guy's picking it up. I go, why would he cancel? Okay, whatever, but here I am. I get there. Guy picks me up, Wyatt, in the Uber, and he said, yeah, your other driver canceled because you don't have a good rating. I said, I'm sorry, what? You don't have a good rating. I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. What does that even mean? Well, apparently, Uber drivers, now we're used to where you can rate a restaurant, right? Oh, it was great service, it was terrible. You can rate whatever, I guess, right? We're used to that. I didn't know this, but apparently Uber allows them to rate their customers. You see, you don't got a great rating. I said, I don't even know what that means. What does one need to do to get a great rating? He said, because here's what I do. I come home, I get an Uber, I get in the back, I mind my own business, you take me home, I tip, and we're done. I don't know what, now, I don't know if I've ever rated the guy, done the stars thing, because frankly, I don't give a crap. I just want to go home. I don't want to play your techno game and play all that. I just want you, here's your money, here's your tip. May I leave, please? Didn't know I had to go through some kind of RPG to finish the thing that I paid you for. Anyways, the guy says, I always give my customers 5-star ratings. So I realized he was letting me know, right? I get home. I'm all paranoid. I give this guy a 5-star rating. I give him a, extra thing because I'm going, what up? I just want to be able to go and get my Uber. And then I realized this is communism. This is what we have feared, and here it is. You now get social scores. And here's the thing that's so frightening about this, Wyatt. What if somebody just decides they don't like you? What if somebody recognized me and said, hey, that's that conservative Christian guy. I don't like those guys. I'm going to give him a crap rating. I'm going to destroy his life. Well, that's what's happening. Because I didn't do anything to warrant not having a good rating. If I never tipped these people or I was cussing at them, okay, I get it. I don't do anything. I don't even talk to them. I just mind my own business. So it made me realize what was at stake, that this whole technocracy, oligarchy of controlling the narrative, controlling your ability to be able to engage in culture without people deciding if they're going to give you a good rating. It is so anti-human, subhuman, because it's all done anonymously, it's all done without proof, without even acknowledging, without even having to justify. I could do the same thing. I could just tell that guy could have been the nicest guy in the world, hey, I'm saving up, I got my first baby on the way, thank you for helping me out. And I could say, he sucked, he was terrible. I could do that. And it wouldn't be fair. It wouldn't be just. It wouldn't be virtuous. It wouldn't be moral. It wouldn't be good. And yet here we sit. So it made me go, maybe I need to dump Uber and go to Lyft. I just get somebody else. And then my wife said, and I don't know if you're familiar with my wife. She's your mom. But she told me that Lyft does the same thing. That all of these, and by the way, all this Uber, Lyft, computer crap is your age group. You're the people that kind of started this junk. They're all this leftist, communist, systemically narcissist people who've created a world where they get to cancel and destroy people they disagree with because that's what children do. And remember, narcissism, leftism is childlike or systemic narcissism. It is children in adult bodies running the show. These are people that need safe spaces. These are people that cannot deal with conflict. They certainly can't allow people to disagree with them. It's, again, childlike. There's no maturity, no virtue. But what really bothers me, maybe almost as much, Wyatt, if not more, is this inability for them to, your age and below, to learn how to just engage people. And if you do have an issue with somebody, face to face, eye to eye, what we used to call man to man, let's talk about it. Yeah, I didn't like it when you did so-and-so. I don't like it when you call me this. I don't like, okay, let's talk. Let's see if that's true. Let's see if it was justified, or let's see if you misunderstood or miscommunicated, or let's see if I was having a bad day and could say, my bad, I apologize. But this anonymous construction of how somebody else's life is going to be affected when they didn't do anything is evil. And we got to fight back. That's what the militia of the mind is. What if you're a person out there who wants to identify as a Christian, not talk about being a Christian or go to church Christian or read your Bible Christian or has some Christian ideas, but you actually are willing to die for it. You're willing to face whatever scrutiny it is, maybe lose your job for it. Join the militia of the mind, because that's who we are. That's what we're doing. And if you're the first 10,000 that join, it's $3 a month, you will be part of the mighty 10,000, and you will be able to purchase a T-shirt. We're getting those. I think you can do it now. And yeah, I thought we were going to give them away. We can't. They're too expensive. What I am going to do, though, is make a signed, numbered number that you are in the, you got to pay extra for that. But nevertheless, that's how we're going to do it. It's the only way we can make this podcast grow and be self-sustaining. I really want to get to a place where I can hire a full-time producer, director, editor person that does it full-time so they can really be Johnny on the spot. Why, you got any suggestions?
Absolutely, positively, unequivocally, no. Okay,
well, listen. So it made me think, though, that these people that create this kind of stuff resent people my age, because I'm older. I'm a boomer, Wyatt. You know what that means?
Yes.
No, you don't.
I believe so. Doesn't it mean you were born during the baby boom that happened after World War II?
Yeah, so around 1948-ish to 1963-ish.
Yep.
Okay, so I once heard, I don't hear it as much anymore, so maybe it ran its course, but there were people your age and younger who were, if they heard us say something of wisdom, they'd say, okay, boomer. Okay, boomer. I mean, let's just insult people who are wiser and older than you. What a bunch of idiots. You can't be more stupid than not to acknowledge and be grateful for people smarter and older than you to learn from.
Okay, older I can accept, but older does not bequeath wiser all the time.
How do you know?
Well, we're having this conversation, aren't we?
I'll tell you what we're going to do. I commented on this once on what is now becoming Brad Stine's Truthache. It wasn't called that then. This was the origins of Brad Stine Has Issues. But I want to play it for people because I want you to see my take on my age and my wisdom compared to my son and maybe the lamest generation ever created. Wyatt, hit it. Something wonderful happened to me today. A millennial left a snarky comment on my channel by saying this: "Okay, boomer." Why is it wonderful, you ask? Because apparently they actually think it's a clever insult. Stick around, watch how big boys play. Okay, boom. Hey guys, it's God's Comic Brad Stine, and I have a confession to make. I'm a baby boomer. This was not by choice, by the way. It just happens to be the moment in history I vacated the womb. Nevertheless, because of this reality, I didn't grow up with social media as my guide as to how to present myself to humanity. Things were different. I had friends, for example, who came in the package of biological three-dimensional beings, as opposed to people I've never met who friended me by pushing a button on their computer in Iceland and instantly became a follower. Follower? What, am I, a messiah suddenly? Boomers didn't grow up taking photos of ourselves to send to others, which would have been considered extremely narcissistic. But we actually used our film cachet taking pictures of friends and family we actually knew and loved and admired. I had a millennial try to insult me the other day on the comment section of one of my episodes. Let me think. I think it was the episode where I proved I was superior to them. Anyways, they did it by using this phrase: "Okay, boomer." I'll admit it, I'm boomer enough not to know what it meant, because it's a phrase that's found its way within the social media infrastructure, and because I, unlike millennials, don't actually spend all of my waking moments being instructed in what I'm allowed to think through these circles, I wasn't up on the current trends. You always know it's a current trend because by the time a mature, intelligent adult like myself and others of my era stumble across it, it's outdated. You ever notice, by the way, how quickly millennial trends just kind of come and go? They never stick around long, do they? Maybe because they're usually dumb. Anyways, had to go on to the internet to find out what OK Boomer meant. You heard me, the internet. You know, the world-changing means of communicating ideas daily in an instant that millennials literally can't survive without. And that has revolutionized how humans worldwide interact and connect, and was leveraged and made commonplace by boomers. In fact, the very technology that you're staring at right now was brought to you by the likes of revolutionary heroes such as Steve Jobs or Bill Gates. That's right. Okay, boomers. Now, my research stated that okay boomer is an insult towards people born between 1945 and 1965. It's an insult inherently proposing that people that fit in that age category, well, they can be safely ignored because they're too old to understand things that are explained on the boomer-facilitated internet, or boomer-created personal computers, or on boomer-popularized cell phones. I think you get an idea where I'm heading here. Even though it was directed at me personally, I think it speaks to a much broader and sadder issue in that children from the ages of 18 to 30 have become maybe the first group in human history that apparently have been taught that to gather wisdom and life experience from those who've gone before you and blaze the trails you're marching on is no longer important. The idea of not only respecting your elders, but to hold them somewhat in awe, apparently, well, that's a bygone virtue. Meanwhile, millennials are teaching themselves, excuse me, not teaching, that would fall in the category of education, but instead are being indoctrinated in the idea that all of us boomers who have bought and sold more than one house, invented or refined the greatest scientific breakthroughs of the last 60 years, have acquired trillions of dollars in assets, and are still around to pass this information on to their progeny, are of no use to them. Humanity throughout history has learned the incredibly crucial lesson that there's one thing that can only be learned by getting older. A younger person can gather information, education, knowledge, and facts about a plethora of topics in history, but the one thing you can't buy, can't even acquire by education or degree, is perspective. Only those who've lived numerous experiences, both good and bad, can begin to garner wisdom, which is the culmination of information and life experience. combined with analyzing the history that has preceded you. This is the basis for being a conservative. We believe in the age-old wisdom of conserving age-old wisdom. I joke about millennials because you, unfortunately, have the reputation for being maybe the most fragile, weak, and vapid generation in U.S. history. The proof of this is when you fail, you've learned the leftist technique that failure is never your fault, but is in fact the fault of those that haven't given you even more free stuff without working for it, in order to give you more time to complain about what you don't have. If you're a millennial or Gen X or Gen Z or any other letter of the alphabet you haven't learned yet, you need to know that every time you say, okay, boomer, you're literally admitting you don't care what someone says to you that is more successful, wealthy, educated, more wise, and accomplished. Mainly because all you care about is you're not wealthy, successful, accomplished, or open-minded, or tolerant, or wise. And it's your parents' fault. You're literally proving that everything we accuse you of is not only true, but you've confirmed it. So you retort with an insult instead of contemplation, and maybe just once, taking personal responsibility for yourself. But best of all, you seal your shallow insult by having your names attached, so everyone can see what failure's name is. Your insult is figuratively, see, I use that word literally, accurately, shooting yourself in the foot and blaming the gun. That doesn't embarrass you? Remember, the word boomer implies power, explosion, an uncontrollable force. Whereas millennial, Gen X, and Gen Z is so innocuous, has to be described by a passage of time or a letter as opposed to a whole word. The letter implies a word is coming, but you're too lazy to think of it yet. Yeah, well, the boomers are here to give you your marching orders. We've been where you are, and we figured it out. Changed the world forever, and have had the decency and the obligation to help guide you through the fog in order to allow you the opportunity to go forth and do the same for those behind you. Yet, you'd rather mock and ridicule the wise and blame your failure to launch on the people who left you a map for your journey. Instead, you need to be carried because it's scary out there and the monsters might eat us. Put a helmet on. There has historically been the phrase boom or bust. A boom town grew fast, was exciting, had room for everyone, and especially if they wanted to succeed. A bust, that was a failure and destruction of what started out as a good idea but became a pipe dream. So, from now on my show, for all you millennials to Gen whatever letter, this boomer's calling you all busters because you broke everything we handed you and then cried that it was our fault. Hey guys, we still are here, so you haven't lost your chance to learn, but it starts with respecting your elders, humbling yourselves, and sitting at our feet so we can teach you something. Or stick to your arrogance. Leave not only a worse country for your kids, actually no country at all. So here's my prediction. All the busters are now going to leave a comment on my thread below saying, okay, boomer, whatever. I can't make you grow up if you don't want to. Well, busters, the truth is boomers have already proven our accomplishments, whereas you guys haven't done anything that's noteworthy. Yet. Sit back, boomers. Watch the fun. Busters and competence admissions arriving shortly. Okay? Boom! Told ya. Hey guys, for all of you who want to pay tribute to Steve Jobs, go ahead and take your Mac and push the subscribe button right now to Stine Has Issues on YouTube. You know, that boomer-created construct. Anyways, go out there, subscribe, Stine Has Issues, share, show everybody that us boomers aren't even done. We haven't even begun to fight. Go subscribe now, or I'm going to have to get my cane so I can walk over and beat you with it. Ta-da! The end. Take that, Whitus, Mr. Gen Z.
Actually, I've looked this up. I'm not Gen Z.
What are you?
I literally was born the exact year before they changed it. I am a millennial.
Woohoo! Wyatt is a
know if
millennial.
that's something I should be proud of.
Wyatt
But
is a
I'm
millennial.
gonna be anyway.
Listen, when it turned 2000, you were 4, right? So you
Yeah.
didn't even know what was going on.
And,
Listen,
and the best part is, so they've invented something past Gen Z already.
what is it?
Are you ready for this?
Gen Y. I remember. I've heard of it.
No. It is
Yeah.
Generation Alpha.
Of
It's like, really? You know a Gen Z came up with that name.
course.
Had to have.
Or maybe a boomer did. Maybe we're just starting to mock all you guys. Maybe we're the ones that gave you all these ridiculous
This
names.
is reverse psychology.
Exactly.
You did it.
We're just mocking the crap out of you guys. Listen, Boom is a cool name. Boom is a cool name. We got Boom. You guys got Buster.
Boom is a cool name when you're not on the receiving end
Okay.
of the boom.
No kidding. Well, that's what the Buster was. You know, you listen. Do you believe your generation is respectful of people my age?
I don't think any generation was respectful of the previous generation because every generation is like, no, we're the good one. We're doing it right. All these other people, backwards.
Yeah, you're probably right. That is true. There, it
Wait,
is.
no, you're not supposed to agree with me just off the bat. No argument, no discussion.
Well, I
we
think-
need to fill time, mister. This is a podcast that these people are donating their hard-earned money for.
Yes, I completely disagree with that premise.
Oh, you can't just disagree with me because I said to. What does that prove?
I guess
you
it-
have to have a valid reason to disagree. Otherwise, you're just doing it for the sake of it.
Why everybody watching this believes that you are abusing the elderly, and it is not good.
And I'll do it again.
I'm your dad. You're
my dad, you're my boss, and more importantly, you let me make fun of you.
Why you
That is a
exuded?
powerful combination.
You
my friend.
know you exuded from my loins.
And that is one of the reasons why.
Listen, I don't remember the day that you were created, but I'm sure it was wonderful. I'm sure it was a wonderful day.
You know what?
Does that make you uncomfortable?
No, but please go into excruciating
Awkward?
detail about that day.
I don't
and
think
maybe I'll get there.
I think I'd even be uncomfortable going
It's
to
okay.
this.
I think the question is, who gets uncomfortable first?
Yeah, that's a good point. Listen, son, I got to tell
Probably
you.
the audience, actually.
Yeah, they're going to be feeling like, holy smoke, what has become of Brad Stine Has
And
Issues?
all viewership is gone.
Decline. Yeah, they're like, let's go to YouTube. Maybe it's coming out differently there.
Yeah, I wish we could do a separate, completely different stream on YouTube.
Wouldn't that be hysterical?
But like, we still talk about it like it's the exact same thing.
Well, listen, I got to tell you something. We got to keep the show moving because this next guest is somebody that I wanted on for a while. It was somebody that I've known for quite a few years. I did some documentaries with him. He actually had me do voiceovers for a couple documentaries, cartoon documentaries, and one that was called Rockin' the Wall, talking about how rock and roll was used to help bring down the Soviet Union, if you can believe that. And so
Awesome.
I did the narration on that, as well as something to do with the 1920s and the economy at that time. So he's a historian. He was a professor I think in Ohio at a college. He reached out to me. He was a fan of my material. Can you believe that one? He was a fan of me.
A fan of your material?
Yeah.
Impossible.
I know.
Also, speaking of fans of your material,
Yeah.
real quick,
Yeah.
I just found this comment from Aaron Oakes
Oh.
on Facebook, who said that he has started telling his children that he exuded them from their loins, and he loves it. And I just want everyone to know you did this. You caused this.
Listen,
You
created.
are to blame for all of that.
If he created children from whole cloth, you should take.
You
How many
know-
how many children, how many humans have you created ex nihilo?
You know what you've done.
Well, listen, I think it's important that we take credit. Well, listen, we have to endure you people. We have to endure you children for the rest of our lives. The least we can do is take credit for creating you and letting you know, hey, you wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for us.
Yes, and I am sure they agree with that statement every time they're reminded of it.
Well, all right. Speaking of reminding, if you are new, go to my YouTube channel, Brad Stine Has Issues, subscribe, notification bell, send this to everybody you know. We're going to get 100,000. 2, follow and follow on Facebook so that also will be there. Now, there might be some interesting things on the horizon for the podcast. I'm just going to be honest with you all. Some interesting things. I'm not going to say anything until it does happen. And if it does, and I think it might, then you guys are going to dig it. So I will tell you about that now. But right now, we're trying to build our militia of the mind. These are people who identify as Christians. These are people who identify as Americans, who believe that in the sovereignty of this nation, fighting back against the tyranny that truly has taken place in the judicial segment, in the legislative segment, and in the executive branch. Despotism, totalitarianism, leftism, destroying our country, destroying it in real time as we speak, and we want to fight back. And we have ways to do that by having access to different types of people who are experts in these areas, so you can educate yourself but also fight if you need to, including lawyers and help if they try to fire you for standing up for your truth. We have to be the last truth tellers on earth. It's crucial. So please get your family. If every one of you guys that have subscribed and have joined the Militia of the Mind, you know family members that are probably of like-mindedness. Do me a favor. Just say, hey, would you all jump? All you have to do is join it. Just join. It's $3 a month. Even Wyatt has $3 a month, and he works at Lowe's. So jump in. Let's grow this thing. Let's get that mighty 10,000 and see what can happen from that. But that being said, we're going to jump into this guest because you're going to love him. Again, as I said, it's somebody that I've worked with, somebody that reached out to me as a professor of history in a college in Ohio, and then I did some documentaries with him. But he wrote an amazing book that you're going to see displayed here during the interview, and you're going to want to get it. You can get it on Amazon. I'm sure Karen Boyd will put up the link because she's a genius at that. What is it about Karen? How would we survive without her?
Well, we wouldn't.
Exactly. So, folks, I want you to sit back and enjoy this. Now, I've got some amazing guests coming up. Next week, we're going to have a very, very unique guest who has a movie coming out about his life, and he will be our guest next week. But for right now, for those of you out there, most of you who watch this, and I do get people from the Philippines that watch, or from Ireland that watch, or from the UK that watch, or from Canada that watch, poor Danny Herring. But this is America. This is where I'm from. This is the territory I'm defending, but I'm also defending free speech and truth. And that comes in any category, every ethnicity, and every country. So you're going to love this guy because he is an expert on our country, our history, our nation. And it's going to give you more education. I always want you to be educated, to be insightful, to have all the insight that you can. And that's what the militia of the mind means. We're going to outpray him, outfight him, outbelieve him, outlast him. Or die trying. So, folks, be grateful, be thankful, keep donating if you choose to. We're running out of the rest of the year, so go ahead and jump on. If you just want to donate for the ministry in general, please be my guest. It is a 501c3 because we are putting this material out to help you understand what's happening in America. In the meantime, enjoy this incredibly insightful and fascinating interview with Professor Larry Schweikart. Enjoy and thank me later. So, when I came out of the closet, I don't know, 25 years ago, as a comic, and decided to destroy my career by admitting I was a conservative and a Christian, it also opened up some amazing doors to meet some amazing and interesting people. People of all walks of life, but fellow Americans fighting the good fight, who saw the lay of the land, who realized that freedom isn't free, who made it very clear that the path that we are on is treacherous and it is not healthy and it will not end well if we don't put some brakes on and find some balance. And so I've been blessed to find folks that are experts in certain parts of the American milieu, because we really need experts for this nation to survive. It will have to be, as I've called it, the militia of the mind, where we'll outthink, outpray, outbelieve, outfight these people, because we've been abandoned by DC, and it's a peasant's revolt, or we won't survive. And there we sit. But it wouldn't be the first time. in America that the regular old folks, farmers and mill hands, if they even still exist, decided that freedom was worth whatever was necessary to keep it. Now, that sounds like daunting words, perhaps over the top for those who are not paying attention. But any revolution that has destroyed freedom was successful because of the lethargy of so many of the citizens. So I'm going to do what I can to try to at least speak well and truthfully and as a warrior in this time and place. And most importantly, bring on folks that are like-minded who can help assist us and educate us and inspire us to know how to go forward. There's an old saying that everybody has heard. If you are not familiar and pay attention to history, it will repeat itself. The problem with that saying that everybody's familiar with is it doesn't seem to work, because no matter what we know or don't know, we keep repeating it over and over again. This next guest, I first met, actually, he reached out to me. He was a professor, I believe, at history. I hope I'm not monikering you, but professor of history at Dayton University. But I guess he had seen my material or whatever, and he thought it was interesting because it was similar to what he was doing as a teacher. And somehow we connected, and we did some projects together, some documentaries that he had been involved with. We might bring it up. But he also wrote a book, Patriot's History. Actually, he's going to have it up on his screen, but I actually have it. Patriot's History of the United States, from Columbus' Great Discovery to the War on Terror. And I'm sure when this was written, it was pretty profound, but now it might even have a lot more addendums that it could use. But here we sit. So I'm going to bring on an old friend and certainly a fellow warrior in freedom, Larry Schweikart. How are you, Larry?
Hey, Brad. Well, the way I first heard of you was you did a comedy routine at our church,
okay,
Southbrook Christian Church in Centerville, Ohio.
Oh.
And so when it came time for us to do our second film called Other Walls to Fall, we had done one in 2010 called Rock on the Wall, about how rock music helped bring down the Iron Curtain. And Adam Baldwin, the actor, narrated that one. And when it came time to do our second film, it was, when we looked at the cut, it was really heavy. It was very, very serious. We had a heavy metal group from inside Tehran who had smuggled us footage. These people were dealing with life and death, not just music. And so I thought it would be better to have a lighter voice, as it were, do the narration. So I contacted you and asked if you'd do the narration for Other Walls to Fall, which you did. And then after that, we got together on a little animated feature called The Economic Engine of the Roaring Twenties. And it was very Disney-like, back when Disney used to be a decent company. And you did a great narration for that. So we worked together on several occasions. And by the way, when you did that narration for Economic Engine, we did it at Clint Black's home studio in Nashville. And just tomorrow night, I will be seeing Clint in his concert here in Chandler, Arizona, where we have backstage tickets. So kind of 3 degrees of separation there.
Nice. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that you had seen me there. I assumed maybe it was through YouTube or whatever. It's irrelevant. I just, it's fun how in the double-edged sword of technology that it can be used nefariously, but also it allows people to connect that maybe wouldn't have known how to do that or wouldn't have been able to, 50 years ago. So in that regard, I find it, like all technology, how shall it be used, for good or for evil? But here we sit. So enough about that. Larry, you probably had millions of interviews in your life, and certainly have been on lots of panels and done many lectures and so forth and so on. And one of the things about Stine Has Issues, my particular little podcast that I fell into, was I really care about not just bringing up particular points of view. Yeah, I'm a conservative, I'm a Christian, so obviously the Judeo-Christian point of view as a worldview perspective is something I talk about. It's in my comedy as well as in my just in my social commentary, obviously, as well as conservatism and its points of view as well. That's obvious. But what I did notice, Larry, is that a lot of podcasts, unless they're just sort of a comedy podcast where they're just messing around all the time, but if they have a point of view, they usually do the same thing. They choose their side and either just spend the time mocking the other side or living hand-wringing in outrage that somebody from the other side did A, B, and C, and they're like, can you imagine if we did that, what would happen to us? I'm not interested in that because it doesn't fix anything. All it does is provoke sort of an emotional response, and you leverage somebody's point of view for money, and it wasn't what I was interested in doing. I said, if we can't fix this, or at least die trying, we're wasting our time because there's too much at stake right now. And as a historian, I mean, I would think that you guys must have nightmares every night you try to go to sleep because you are those who remembered history and has seen what has happened, and so you can correlate when you see similar things happening in another culture and say, listen, this is exactly like 1939 Germany, this is exactly like pre-Civil War, this is exactly like 1774 revolution, I mean, because history repeats itself and nobody learns. It just comes in different flavors. So I guess what I would like to start is one of the things that I tried to do is define terms. Whoever controls the language controls the people. So if I can control the language or redefine it or have it mean something it doesn't mean, I can literally control you if you don't stop and define it. Now, you are a professor of history, but you seem to be a conservative, or I don't know if you've ever sort of labeled yourself that way proudly, or if it just happens to be your point of view. So I'll allow you to say that one way or the other. But let's start with this, since it's such a disparaging term from those who control the dissemination of information. What's a conservative? What does it mean to be a conservative?
That's a great question. You know, starting with the whole notion of Santayana's comment that those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And history does not repeat itself. It resembles itself, but people are constant. And this is what people forget about this phrase, is that human nature has not changed in thousands of years. We're sinful creatures, and given enough power, we will become exceedingly sinful. And so that's why so many people misunderstand that phrase, is it doesn't matter what the setting is, human nature is going to sooner or later descend into the lower elements, the sinful elements of humanity. So over time, we've had a number of phrases to capture different political ideologies. In our early republic, we had Federalists and Republicans. And at the time, the Federalists pulled one of the greatest tricks in the book. They used to be called the Nationalists. And Thomas Jefferson and the Federalists were called the Federalists. But the Nationalists, who wanted a strong national government, and the Federalists, who wanted a federal system of divided control, Nationalists figured out they were going to take that term, Federalists, and apply it to themselves. And the Jeffersonians lost out, and they were stuck with the term anti-Federalists. And of course, you don't ever want to be anti-anything. That's bad. You want to be pro something. So right off the bat, the Federalists pulled off one of the greatest PR stunts in American history. Now, those two parties kind of went along for about 30 years till the early 1820s. And the Federalists generally were considered to be the more conservative party, i.e. hanging on to more traditions, whereas the Republicans or the Anti-Federalists were considered to be the more revolutionary party, favoring more democratic change. We entered a period in the teens, 1810 to about 1826, where we had one party control. I know this would come as a shock to many people today who talk about the uniparty, but we actually did have just one party in American history for about 20 years, called, ready for this, the Democratic Republicans. Imagine that. So when we got the second party started with Martin Van Buren in the 1820s and the Democrat Party, they became the more common man party, the party supposedly of the common man. Wasn't true, but that's how they sold themselves. And the Whigs became the more conservative party over time. Really, the issue here was that from about 1820 to the Civil War, nobody wanted to talk about slavery. It was the issue nobody would talk about. And so until you got the forming of the Republican Party in 1855, which the first plank was no slavery in the territories, the Democrats were founded to protect and preserve slavery. That was Martin Van Buren's goal. And so, as I say, you know, Jesus said you can't get good fruit from a bad tree. And I don't care how they reformed themselves over the years, the Democrats came from a bad tree. Their roots are bad. Their roots are in slavery. So really, this kind of held true for about another 50 or 60 years until Republicans began to model themselves as progressives. This started in the late 1890s, and it was a more socialist, not quite, but a more socialist political view that soon the Democrats took over under Woodrow Wilson and then later Franklin D. Roosevelt. So coming out of World War II, the Democrats were associated more with liberalism as expanding the power of the federal government, more top-down control, more goodies to people from the government, and Republicans were associated with conservatism, i.e., holding to the values that were in place prior to Woodrow Wilson. And that's kind of the way things have stuck up until the very present, when really conservatism doesn't apply to Republicans anymore, because the Republicans are split. There's two groups. There's what we call the rhinos, or Republicans in name only, who pretty much vote with Democrats on major issues. Then there is the MAGA, Make America Great Again, populist wing that is radically redefining American parties by siphoning off all the former blue-collar Democrats in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan under the MAGA helm, while kind of the rhinos are gravitating more and more to the Democrats. So I would argue that we no longer have real conservatives, that those people kind of went away by about 2000. We have a populist right, and we have a socialist left.
Well, that's interesting, and I think just in that breakdown of history, those who are conservative are very concerned and hesitant to give any power to the federal government, who are clearly completely lost any sense of defending and representing the people. That is so long gone. And you know what, Larry? Here's what I'm wondering. I think one of the couple things good that came out of the cult of Corona was, for some reason, it kind of exposed a lot of what is really going on worldwide. How much power other entities have outside the U.S. to control the U.S. I don't know how long we haven't really been the people and the republic, frankly, because maybe this deep political underbelly of deep state or control, whatever it would have been called, maybe it's been happening for centuries, and we just are beginning to understand how little we have actually been able to have the autonomy we thought we had. You said federalists. As a conservative, just the word federalist is a red flag to me, because I hear federal government, I hear the federal control, I hear bureaucracy, I hear, loss of freedom, a loss of First Amendment rights. Certainly, we saw within the Corona, at least the exposure of the politicization of the FBI, the politicization of the CIA, the politicization of the IRS, the politicization of the CDC, the politicization of all of these federal organizations that are controlling America and seem to be independent of the people's vote or even the executive branch. Now, they're in line with Biden, so it fits well. But certainly when Trump was in office, they didn't give a crap what he had to say. They were going to do what they want. Well, that is not a republic,
right, at
all. So explain to me how this federalism somehow had a positive undergirding then, as far as how federalism was considered a positive. How was that for the people? How did the word get convoluted? That's what I'm curious about.
Okay. Well, the Federalists call themselves that because they believed in separation of powers between federal, state, local governments, that it was a structure of division of powers, and then furthermore, it was broken up at the federal level into Congress, president, judiciary, that were supposed to be under checks and balances. And especially since World War II, what happened to federalism, with a few exceptions. I mean, Nixon tried to restore some of the power to the states back in the 60s, but with a few exceptions, that power has kind of gravitated more and more to the central government, especially after the Great Depression. So, your check is in mail. Thanks for boosting my book, Dragon Slayers, there. But this is what my book, Dragon Slayers, is all about. It's about 6 presidents and their war with the swamp, because this does go back a very long way. Abraham Lincoln fought the slave power conspiracy. At one time, the slave power controlled the Senate. Because of the 3/5 rule, it controlled most of the House of Representatives. It controlled the Supreme Court. And until 1860, it controlled the presidency. There was a long time in which Van Buren is, I call him the most important man nobody's ever heard of in American history, because when he formed the Democrat Party to protect slavery, one of his ideas was a slave owner will never, a big slave owner, a Southern Virginia, Georgia slave owner, will never get elected president again. So we have to focus on getting Westerners. Back then, the West was your state, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, maybe Ohio. We have to get Westerners who were deemed pure back then. In the early part of the Republic, the West was seen as this great pristine area, and people who went out West and toughed it out, they were really the pioneers, and they were kind of full of virtue, right? So Westerners could be trusted. Or Northern men of Southern principles. By that he meant Northerners who would toe the line on slavery. So if you look at our presidents from John Quincy Adams up to Lincoln, you get all Westerners or Northern men of Southern principles, which is to say not one single one of them would attempt to do anything about the growth and expansion of slavery. Many of them, in fact, kind of encouraged it by annexing Texas and California and so on and so forth. So Lincoln battled the slave swamp. To do that, he needed a big government. I mean, when you fight a war, governments tend to grow. You spend a lot of money, a lot of contracts get dished out, you need a big army. So he won the war. So he beat the slave power conspiracy, but the next guy in line was Grover Cleveland. By the 1870s, there was a real concern about the power of the federal government, especially something called patronage or the spoil system, where presidents literally would spend months and months doing nothing but signing job applications for people who would come to Washington to get federal jobs because their guy just won the presidency. And while Lincoln was fighting the war, he literally had lines of people outside the White House door. He had one guard, by the way. He had lines of people out the White House door waiting to be given a federal job. Well, by the 1870s, somebody said, we got to do something about this. And the champion was a guy named James Garfield. He was to stop the spoil system. Well, one of the guys that he denied a job to, Guiteau, killed him, shot him. And he said, Garfield is dead, and now Arthur is president. Arthur supposedly was one of the spoilsmen, one of the guys who was going to give away jobs. And we have one of those rare events in all of American history where somebody has a change of heart in the right direction. And Arthur goes, I can't go along with this. This is the terrible system. We must reform it. We must get this out of the hands of presidents. And he began the process. Now, he had Bright's disease and couldn't serve a second term. So in his place in 1880 was elected Grover Cleveland, who I call the last good Democrat. Grover Cleveland was set on getting rid of the spoil system. And he vetoed hundreds and hundreds of these job applications that came before him from Congress. And eventually, he signed the Pendleton Civil Service Act that took all these jobs out of the hands of a president and put them in the hands of a civil service commission. So you want to be a postmaster, you take a test, the civil service exam, to go be a postmaster. It worked for a while, and I could give you some examples of how in the long run this wasn't so good, but it worked for a while. Teddy Roosevelt comes along, and he sees a different kind of deep state or swamp, corporations. That there were corporations that controlled 85% of a certain industry at this time, whether it was sugar or whiskey or oil or whatnot. So he launched a war on trusts and was fairly successful. He's the last of our 6 presidents who was successful, but he forgot one trust: journalism. He did not take on the newspapers, and as a result, they became an entity on their own that could be controlled by government. John Kennedy came in after World War II and wanted to control the CIA. His record was mixed, because while he tried in some ways to control the CIA, he also needed them for the war in Vietnam, which there's kind of a myth that Kennedy was taking us out of Vietnam, but if you look at the numbers, when he was elected, there were 600 American advisors in Vietnam. When he was assassinated, there were 16,000. So Kennedy was not getting us out of Vietnam. He was assassinated. Whatever the links were there or not to the CIA remain in question. I won't dismiss it, but I don't think we have enough proof right now to say definitely they were involved. Reagan came along in the 80s clearly with a mandate to reduce government. And I did a lot of research in the Reagan archives for my book, Reagan, the American President. I was one of the only ones, you could see by who had gone there. I was one of the only ones to stay there any length of time. And I found documents inside his archives from his own administration, from Reaganites who went in hoping to control government. And David Stockman would say, why aren't you cutting your budget? So, well, you know, this year's budget's already spent, and we pretty much allocated next year's budget, so I won't be getting around to that. These were guys who went in saying they were going to cut budgets. So Reagan failed, and by 1984, he had dropped cutting government from his reelection campaign. Then finally you get Trump, and as you mentioned, Trump comes in with wanting to drain the swamp. Now, when he used that phrase in 2015, 2016, he meant end K Street lobbyists. He was not yet referring to the CIA or the FBI, but he quickly found that they were stabbing him in the back all the time. They wouldn't declassify documents he sent over to be declassified. They weren't sharing information with him. It was just outrageous what was happening. And ultimately, they kind of got him with 2 different impeachments that were utterly baseless. And to some degree, you mentioned the China virus, COVID, they used that for 6 months to generate what I believe, I can't prove it yet, but I believe was a fraud in terms of electing Biden, or my affectionate name for him is the rutabaga. So that's where we are. If Trump comes back, if he pulls a Cleveland, because Cleveland was the only American president to win the presidency, be defeated for the presidency, and come back and win it again. If Trump pulls a Cleveland, I keep telling everybody he needs to come back with 50 mighty men, a dozen Terminex vans, and flamethrowers.
Well, yeah, but there's so many pieces of that machine that have to come together to make this work. Because in my lifetime, I'm a boomer, so I'm older than a lot of folks, but certainly not, I'm not 80. But I certainly never thought I wouldn't be able to vote. I just assumed that has always been our go-to. As a republic, we could say, well, we can vote them out. Well, we can always vote them out. And the point is, what if you can't?
Yeah.
What if you can't vote? The moment, I believe that one way you can, here's the, I'm all over the map here, but it's so frustrating because you're watching something happen in your lifetime that cannot be, if it continues in this direction, it can't be fixed, because those who control power, especially if it's a Marxist, they're not going to relinquish it ever. They will simply bury you. That's what they do. That's where history has proven itself, and it's not being taken seriously. CRT, critical race theory, all based on critical theory, which is all Marxist driven.
Yep.
All of this idea of DEI, diverse, what is it?
Diversity, equity, inclusion.
Equity and inclusion. But all of it is Marxist construct. It's all theory that's now been put into practice, and it's destroying us. And when you teach your children to become Marxist activists, you can't survive. The next generation is literally being told you're a communist now. Of course, they don't use those terms. So I don't know if there's. Let me ask you, because you're on this program because you're the expert, not me. There's been some sort of moments in American history that were watershed moments. That whichever way it tipped was going to be groundbreaking as to what was going to happen in the future. Certainly the Revolutionary War was the beginning. Here was a group of people taking on the most powerful army in history at that time to be free. Now, let's just walk through this history of America and see where we're at now and see if there's correlations. So let's start with the Revolutionary War. I'm running an area of the country that I've been, of a country that we founded. Pilgrims came here, had a Mayflower Compact, an expectation of what would be expected of those who would become part of this this experiment. It all becomes essentially a group of people that begin to thrive and become Americans, even though that wasn't really it yet. They were colonies, but they were becoming their own DNA, their own self-sufficient agency of government and so forth. But they were still ruled, or I'm even not sure what they were considered, a territory of Great Britain, I don't know. But whatever they were, they still had that control. And there came a point when they felt like their work, their achievements, their ability to create this nation was being cast aside and was simply going to be run by the king based on what he said. And they felt like, no, we started this. We created, you didn't do this. We did. Okay, so Larry, why isn't that treason? Why isn't, hey, this ain't your, I don't care who started. It's Great Britain. We put you out there. We supplied needs. We funded you. It's ours. And we said, now we're going to fight it. Why isn't that not terrorism?
It was.
So then how do we justify it?
Okay, let me back up a little bit. Now, you have an early edition of Patriot's history. The one I have on screen is the 15th anniversary edition, which came out in 2019. We're now in our 40th printing, 500,000 copies in print. It's probably the best-selling conservative history textbook ever. And since we wrote your edition, we added something very, very important, which is the 4 pillars of American exceptionalism. We started to look at why America was exceptional, because this really goes to your question here. And the first 2 pillars are key. The first one was when they came off the Mayflower, we had a Christian, mostly Protestant, religious tradition. That was not true of Jamestown. Jamestown was Anglican. And I don't know if people know their church history, but the Anglicans were not Protestants. They weren't protesting against anything other than for Henry VIII to have a hottie. I mean, he said, I want to have Anne Boleyn, and if you don't give me her, I'll start a new church. So the Puritans and the Pilgrims, all Pilgrims were Puritans, but all Puritans weren't Pilgrims, just the ones who came over here, were bottom-up Congregationalists, and that's key. That for the first time in human history, a society was founded with a bottom-up church religion. And so you get these congregations making church decisions, not a pope, not an archbishop, not the head of the Greek Orthodox Church, not Shintoism. It was bottom up, where everybody else is top down. The other thing that happened was, you mentioned the Mayflower Compact. Before they even get off the boat, they say, we have to do something about the 60 people on the boat who are not Pilgrims or Puritans. We have to tell the king we're not treasonous because we landed at the wrong place. And we have to elect a governor. This is the first time in human history a society began with bottom-up common law. Everybody in Europe was divine right of kings, was top-down. So when you mention we go all the way up to the Revolution, we were subjects of the king. But the king was operating on the dominion principle of I give orders and they come down. And we were operating on democratic principles that the people elect or select their own governors and rulers. And that's what caused the break. Now, let me address your listeners, I think, are going to want to have some hope. And I think there's a lot of hope here. In the first place, as you say, we've been through this before. If you think politics is corrupt now, you should look at what it was like in New York in the 1850s. I don't know if you've ever seen a movie called Gangs of New York with Leonardo DiCaprio. There's a great scene in there where they go to the saloons. They get all the drunks out, they herd them down, they tell them who to vote for, and when they're done, they shave them, put them in different clothes, and take them back and vote them again. This has been happening for over 100 years. There's nothing new. All that occurred in 2020 was there was a different scale of fraud. But fraud has been, you might know the Kennedy-Nixon election in 60. I don't know if you're old enough to remember that, but they claimed that Chicago had the dead people voting. And the scholarship today is such that we don't know anymore. We can't say Kennedy was duly elected. All we can say is questions remain. So let me give you some hope. You talk about, the Marxism and getting into the schools and educating the kids. Lenin once said, give me a child for 8 years and I'll have him for life. How'd that work out for Russia? In the 1990s, the Russian people said, enough. Now, yes, they had some support from Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher and the Pope and other places, but basically communism gave up on itself. It could no longer operate. They had to pull out of Afghanistan when Russian housewives were saying, no more, you're not taking my kids for wars anymore. And communism can't survive if it doesn't expand, if it doesn't grow. Capitalism can. We can always create new products and we can survive. And if you just put us on Mars, we would thrive on Mars, right? But the communists can't. So I think there is room for a lot of hope. We've seen the largest communist society in the world collapse really from the inside out. We're seeing today China start to unravel big time. No, I'm not going to say China's going to collapse tomorrow. But the Chinese birth rate, do you realize that by 2030, the U.S. will be a younger nation than China? Their birth rate is collapsing. Their monetary system's collapsing. Their real estate market is in horrible trouble. So they're on the verge. The second largest communist nation ever in history is on the verge of decline, if not collapse. I think there's a lot of evidence out there. And this is kind of the basis of my new book that'll be out in March called A Patriot's History of Globalism, Its Rise and Decline. And I think there's a lot of evidence out there that the woke revolution is coming to an end. You have moms out there standing up for education. You've got school boards being taken back over by people that say, you're not going to tell my daughter that she's a he. You've got all sorts of voter reforms, not enough, and not in some of the places they need to be, but they are starting, they are going through. Now, let me just say one word, because I know a lot of listeners are going to be concerned about this. You may have seen in the news that Pennsylvania sent out ballots to everybody, whether they were registered voters or not. And people are freaking out, oh, this is terrible. Well, a friend of mine is Richard Barris, who in 2016 was the most accurate pollster in America. He was in the top 5 in 2020. And Barris has done some amazing research on unregistered voters. And what he found was that they were 20 points more likely to vote for Trump than for Biden, unregistered voters. So maybe Pennsylvania has done us a favor by sending out all these ballots to unregistered voters who are more likely to turn out for the so-called conservative or MAGA position. We'll have to see. I think there's a lot of trends out there that suggest that there's a lot of hope. Now, the biggest area where you and I share is we want to see more of a revival in the church. The church has utterly collapsed in the last 30 years. We've got I do a thing called Today's News, where on uncoverdc.com every day for about 10 minutes, I go over the top 20 to 40 headlines. And almost every week, I'll have some story about a church that's doing Legos or Jurassic Park or Star Wars as kind of some theme to get people in, as if the Word of God isn't enough. The Word of God used to attract millions of people worldwide. Billy Graham could go out and preach to 1 million people at a time. So we need a bigger revival. We see embers, like what was happening at that college. I forget the name of it. Was it in Kentucky?
Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I forgot too. Now that I think about it, they said there was another one in Auburn there's been some sort of revival taking place. I just forgot.
2000. Yeah, 2,000 students were baptized at Auburn just last week.
Yeah. Well,
so
I mean,
we need more of that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Old Testament saying, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and repent of their ways, and I'll hear from heaven and heal their land. He said, my people called by my name. He wasn't calling the nation has to repent. He's talking about the church is responsible for the spiritual third great awakening. Because the church is filled with too many churchgoers and not enough Christians. A true Christian's life is a sacrifice to truth. That's the biggest thing I discovered. Not the biggest thing, but it helped me navigate. I'm just a regular American comic. I didn't want to get into any of this, Larry. I didn't want to get called the ministry. I didn't want to sort of fight within the context of my comedy and talk about Judeo-Christian worldview concepts and mock cultural Marxism or whatever, because it's not the sweet spot for making a good money as a comic. You just be funny for everybody. Don't make any waves. You'll make a great living. I couldn't. I said, I got on stage. It's like, there's things I have to say. I don't understand this, but there's things that are more important than laughter. Now, I hope you laugh, but I hope my laughter breaks down your presuppositional worldview that you guard your heart with, so that you can hear truth fully. You talked about the corona, and how it was used and manipulated, especially in the election. But I think one thing that we don't know anymore, and you said I'm giving you hope, and I'm like, man, where did you find, where are you digging up hope, brother? Because the rest of us are like going, this is not, the wheels have come off. And I'm grateful that you are. But I think one thing we've learned is how do we discern truth in an age where information isn't necessarily validated, vetted? We have no integrity in the journalism. It's gone. It doesn't exist. It's pure propaganda now. We don't know where to go. But then again, Larry, in retrospect, seeing the world through the new unfiltered eyes of how maybe oligarchs who have been controlling the world all along, Walter Cronkite used to be the most trusted man in America. That dude leaned left. He wasn't impartial. But we didn't know that. We just presumed. No. You just love America, right?
Yeah, and it's still possible, Brad. I taught at the University of Dayton for many, many years with another Larry, a guy named Larry. He was a European historian, and he was an East German-loving Marxist. Absolutely. He said, I'm not a liberal, I'm a socialist. But you know what? His students never knew which way he voted, ever. And we would team teach. We even team taught a course on the Kennedy assassination. And he was so fair and balanced about how he did things that you just never know. Let me remind your viewers that every revolution in history is not made by numbers. The American Revolution, there were fewer than 30% of the Americans who actually supported the revolution. 30% were Tories. 30% could give a crap. They just didn't care one way or another. Lenin took over the Soviet Union with just 20,000 hardcore communists, a nation of 160 million people. And so I'm always reminded of God and Gideon. And God says to Gideon, I need you to go out and take down this army. And he says, okay, well, all right, I got 30,000 guys here. And God says, no, that's too many. You don't need 30,000. Get rid of them. Okay, I got 3,000. No, that's too many. Get rid of them. And he ends up with 300. Now, there's two aspects to that. One is God wanted to make sure that Gideon knew where the victory came from, which was him. But two, he also wanted to remind Gideon that it's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog. And that you don't need a majority to affect a massive social change. Let's look, for example, at what I call transoidism. The transoid movement has been brought about by less than 1% of the American population. And I go back to your words are so important. And I refuse to call employees workers. That's a Marxist term. The word is employees. They're not workers. But we have so many little things like that we slip into, right? So just to kind of bring this back to where you were and truth, and how do we know it's truth? Check it out with the Word of God. If it's not aligned with the Word of God, it ain't truth. I don't care what kind of lipstick you put on that pig, it ain't truth.
Yeah. Well, and that's crucial because as I was saying to folks, we're the last truth tellers on earth, it appears. We're the ones that are the arbiters of truth. Jesus said he was truth. He didn't say he was a truth or a philosophy or a concept or an ideology or a perspective or a political movement. He said, if there is truth on earth, which there is, it exudes from my essence. I am the transcendent, immutable beginning of all that is true. All truth is God's truth. An atheist says 2 + 2 is 4, it's true. He doesn't acknowledge who gave us mathematics. I believe mathematics is God's language, but because it crosses all language barriers, that mathematics has no specific ethnicity or whatnot. I just think that's how God communicates, is through math. But anyways, that's my own idiosyncrasy.
Which, by the way, explains why they're so anxious to get rid of Western math. Because again, that's God's language.
It is. Well, and it proves itself when you can take these abstract concepts and land on the moon or build a building based on this abstraction. It's like, how are you doing that? How does this comport to reality, this transcendent idea of numbers which don't exist, or concepts? So anyway, that's a philosophical concept, and I didn't mean to get off in that space because
No, this is good stuff. But let me give you a couple more instances where I think we can see some hope on the horizon. So again, you brought up the China virus. I always call it the China virus, not COVID, but the China virus. And I kept hearing earlier in the year, they're going to try to reinstitute the vaxes and the masks and the lockdowns. How'd that work out for them? They tried a little bit of that. All the universities that had gone back said you had to have the mask. They've all pretty much abandoned that. The backlash was so strong against this that I don't think they can ever do that again. Now, it's interesting politically speaking, and I do a lot of political analysis. President Trump has never renounced the vax. And I know a lot of people, that's terrible, he needs to do that. Well, the truth is 82% of the people were vaxxed once, over 50% probably got a booster, according to the statistics we have. It's not a winning proposition to run against the vax. How many of those people wish they hadn't got it? A lot. And my own son got the first one. He said, I'm not getting another one. You know, maybe is that too late for him? I don't know. I don't know what's involved. But I think the fact is you have a large number. Is it a majority? I don't know. But a large number who, in their own minds, deeply question the whole vax thing, wouldn't get another. But are they to the point where they're going to say, I was wrong, with the 3 hardest words in the English language, I was wrong? They're not there yet. So it's that is water under the bridge. Nobody's going to make political hay running for or against the vax. Right now, I'm in my prophet mode now. Right now, I think the issue of 2024 that's going to dwarf everything else is illegal immigration, illegal criminal immigration, because everybody is starting to see it's in all the big cities. The mayors are screaming, the governors are screaming, and it's something that Trump had absolutely under control. He had his thumb on it. The wall was 2/3 built. Now we're back to where we were back in 2008.
Worse, much worse than where we were. You know, that's, you know, all right. So let's analyze. You're a political analyst. So Larry, the immigration thing is, I don't know if there's any precedent for that in American history. It is an invasion. It is absurd. It makes no sense. And the Republicans who theoretically were voted with my sacred vote I gave you to represent me, you don't rule me, you represent me, who are there to check and balance, just like the Democrats allegedly are there to check and balance, right? So in theory, it's nice that we're trying to keep everything level and whatever, but everybody wants power. Everybody wants control. Everybody's ego says, I get to win. My perspective is good, and you have to honor that. So it is what it is. You know, we're believers, so we understand human nature, and if you don't believe in that, then you're going to have a big missing piece of the puzzle as to why people do what they do. But nevertheless, I don't know enough about the government's idiosyncrasies in every particular bill and how every particular session has to run. But why every Republican, if they wanted to really make hay, said, we're shutting down the government. We're leaving D.C. We're all flying down to Texas. And we're going to just stand here until this is done. And we will, I mean, I don't know what to say other than this is an invasion of our country. Right. I don't know how it gets more how does it get more treasonous than that? To explain to me that we have one party who controls the social media, which means the dissemination of information. They control it from the networks to the media to the social media. They control the FBI, the police, the largest police force in the United States of America. Apparently the CIA. They control the IRS, which means they can punish you financially. They are now getting their fingers in through the DEI and the cultural Marxism into the banks, so they can decide if we're going to allow you to spend your money or have money. Let's make it digital so we can simply control you and decide when you can buy and sell. So Larry, and I don't know if I can vote. And I know that Carrie Lake was stolen, and I believe Donald Trump was stolen. And the only evidence I need, my friend, is those who wanted to discuss it were told you're forbidden to bring it up. That's all I need to know. It's true then. Because any belief system that cannot withstand intellectual scrutiny must be abandoned. Something's wrong. How is this not, and I got to be careful what I'm about to say. So hear it as a theoretical observation. When you control every branch of the functioning of a society, you're a despot. You're totalitarian.
Yep.
You are the reason the Second Amendment was created. And even the left who hate our guns for clear purposes, because all totalitarian governments start by disarming their citizens. So I know why they want the guns out of the free citizens. Even they will say, we have guns. You know, it was for the militia. Flippantly thrown that out like, we don't mind the militia. It's written there. What are we going to say? It's right there in plain English. Well, a militia is real. A militia is an army of citizens that will bring bloodshed. I don't want another civil war in America. But if it was created for such a time as this, and we decide, no, we don't want to ever move to that place, it's too much, then you're not defending yourself. And once it's gone, it's gone. So explain to me when, and by the way, I've mentioned this to Professor Robert George of Princeton. I've mentioned this to Rick Green, Patriot Academy. I've met many people that are kind of in your world. And everybody is just adamant about, no, not yet, never, no, it's a long way. And I'm fine. I don't want a war. But Larry, I don't know what else you're supposed to do when people are streaming by the thousands, 21-year-old men, unvetted, walking through people's backyards in Texas. And we're just going to let this happen? How are we going to survive?
Well, President Trump last week used the D word, and he's the only candidate in recent memory to ever use the D word, which was deport. He said, I will deport these people by the tens of thousands. And it's happened before, and not long ago. President Eisenhower had a program where he deported tens and tens of thousands when it was less of a problem than it is now. So he deported a higher percentage of the illegal aliens than Trump is talking about. I think it's possible. I think all things are possible. And as I say, smaller groups who have right on their side and who are committed are far more powerful than larger groups that have all the institutions. Now, I think you're looking a little bit, you're still in the Democrat-Republican mode, and I think we need to get out of that. It's today a MAGA populist group that's a minority, maybe 35, 40%, and we have a 30% Democrat leftist rhino corporatist group, and they don't mind the illegals because to them it's cheap labor. And then you've got about 30% of the persuadables in the middle. And I truly believe that they not only are persuadable in the right direction. I don't think your vote's wasted. I think that we will see a time that votes are again quite effective. And it's going to be shocking. I mean, I think that we're on the cusp of a turnaround. Again, I keep going back to Barris's polling. It's absolutely incredible that today Donald Trump would win Miami-Dade County in Florida. That was unbelievable. That was the equivalent of Chicago at one time. You're seeing poll after poll. I followed maybe the last 9 polls, out of which one of them was tied, and Trump was ahead or tied in all the other. Trump was ahead in the other 8. Now, one of them I throw out said he was ahead by 11. I don't believe that any stretch of the imagination. But most of them he was ahead by 1 or 2. In a national poll, consider this: in 2020, Donald Trump did not lead in one single poll nationally, not one. So this is a big wake-up call. I follow a couple of libs on Substack and other places. One of them's a lib analyst for the Democrats named Rui Teixeira, and he's been screaming for the last 2 years, you're losing all the working class of all colors. I believe really that Trump will probably come very close to a majority of Hispanics in 2020. He might not get a majority, but he's going to be very close. And just a few years ago, he was in the 30s. With Hispanics. Blacks, a little harder, but the polling, if you can believe it, shows him up in the 20% with blacks. Most people who have any common sense at all are saying, we can't keep going like this, and we need not just a change, but a drastic change. Now, about those people in the Senate and the House, those are the hardest ones to get rid of, because the structure of American politics, the senators are elected for 6 years. It takes, last I saw, $20 to $40 million to win a Senate seat. It's a hugely expensive thing. And to get that money, they go to the donors. right? And so this is a big problem. Nevertheless, people like J.D. Vance won in Ohio convincingly with a very MAGA program. So it is possible. I don't give up hope. I think God is still behind us. I was just reading George Washington's inaugural address last night. Do you realize that he spent 1/3 of his first inaugural address thanking and praising God? That's pretty amazing.
Well, very much so. I mean, so clearly, you're a Trump supporter, I guess, or you at least feel like he's the best chance at representing what? I guess you say populist, but give me a historical sort of corollary to who he is. Is he Lincoln? Is he Washington? He's not Wilson, thank God, but who is he? Or is he kind of forged his own trail?
Yeah, and it's very interesting, people say, oh, Trump's nothing like Reagan. Oh, he's not as funny. He's not as endearing and so forth. But I go back to Lincoln. Lincoln never would have been elected president in the age of radio because his voice was high and screechy like that. Nobody wanted to listen to him. Franklin Roosevelt was perfect for radio. He had a honey sweet voice, my friends, and you are my friends, in an age when people would listen to a radio for an hour, right? But he never would have made it an age of television because he had polio. And at that time, in the 60s and 70s, there was still a stigma about people who were handicapped. We see Greg Abbott now has kind of done away with some of that, but that wasn't true 40 years ago. Reagan comes along in the age of television and was brilliant because he was an actor who could memorize all the lines and therefore he could look directly at the people, not the teleprompter. And he made that connection and he was able to make an end run around the biased media. But Trump came about in an era when a president people kept saying, why doesn't he go on TV and make a speech? The networks wouldn't cover him. They wouldn't broadcast his speeches. They called them political events, not presidential speeches, right? How do you get the word out? Well, Twitter, rallies. One of the amazing things about the Trump rallies, people say, well, so he can draw 20,000, but what good is that? He got local television coverage that is much different than national for 3 reasons. One, they would play a longer segment of what he had to say. 2, you didn't have an hour before and an hour afterwards of talking heads telling you what he was going to say and why it was wrong. And 3, it reached areas all around the metro areas that normally Trump wouldn't have been able to get into. So those rallies are incredibly brilliant and important at doing what Reagan could do through national broadcast media. So my short answer is, Brad, that Trump is not Lincoln, he's not FDR, he's not Reagan, he's his own person, and those other guys, as great as they were for their time, wouldn't make it in today's setting.
So let me sort of, as we're getting towards the end, and by the way, I hope you'll come back on, Larry, because
anytime.
You're such a vault of information, and we need it. We need to have some hope, buddy, because that's really where a lot of what's happening in America is causing such disruption. If people see what's happening, that's not it. It's not like we need to raise the alarms and people are walking around lethargic. All you have to do is try to buy some food in the store and go, what has happened? I can't even, it's $100 for an apple, and it's not even, I'm not even being, it's not hyperbole. It's
right. Or have a man beat your daughter in swimming at high school.
Yeah. No, we have reached levels of absurdity that is beyond, and it's such a shame and embarrassment that it's coming out of the United States, which was this Christian nation initially, and believed that we cannot survive if we are not a moral people, a religious people. All the founders agreed with that, including Franklin and Jefferson and all those. They try to turn into deists or whatnot. But I'm going to close with this, which is going to sound a little boring, perhaps, but I think I'm just curious about it, so I take advantage of your expertise since it's my show. Antitrust laws, breaking up of monopolies, control of the government over private citizens who have ownership of their own private businesses. I got to tell you, I was kind of ambivalent about that when I would look at that, because I was never envious of rich people. I always saw them as an inspiration. Like, I didn't look at a guy like a Bill Gates and out of his garage and he becomes a multi-billionaire and say, "Oh, that's unfair." I thought, look what you can do. Look what you can do. And I want to be like that guy. So to me, it was an inspiration. Now, with the realization of the power these people have, with the World Economic Forum, with the idea of an oligarchy, and the fact that Bill Gates utilizes the leverage he has politically throughout the world to make decisions based that that is not voted on, decisions about the ecology and green, and we're going to put we're going to control the weather, and we're going to darken the sun. It's like, who are you? You don't get to do that. But that's the power of money, the power of money and control, and people want something. So what I'm curious about, in a very convoluted way to get to the question, I don't know, it seems as though we almost do need some regulation when it comes to the Twitter, social media, Facebook, because they are, in fact, affecting elections. They are, in fact, talk about delivering fake news. They have no responsibility to truth, and they can choose a side and inundate the culture. Who are just trying to get along and survive and get a paycheck. They don't do deep research. They don't necessarily know what's going on. They probably have chosen a party and they just stick to it. So I wonder if there, constitutionally, if there is sort of an avenue for a control of when it comes to not just a mom and pop store, because I think the culture will weed them out. Hey, you can't eat in my place if you're black. Okay, right. I want you to have a right to say that, because that's your business. Because I believe the society will vote and say we're not going to eat with you. But when it comes to a monolith, and I don't have any options to speak but Facebook, or it's like somebody taking my cell phone and saying, if you're a Christian, you can't use cell phones tomorrow. Right. I can't do that. So tell me, if you can, is there a constitutional right to regulate these folks, or at least somehow find some balance in that? And is that almost essential if we're going to have any kind of fair dissemination of information and facts and candidates going forward?
Well, I can answer that on like three levels. First of all, in the last 3 years, thanks to all the judges that President Trump appointed, there have been a series of court cases, from appellate courts to the Supreme Court, that have chopped away at the deep state. For example, and let me just back up a little. I'm pretty good friends with Steve Bannon, and Bannon said in 2017, when they were getting their list of judges, he said, interestingly, the moral issues or abortion or things like that were not the number one issues they looked at. What they looked at was the person's history of how they ruled on cases related to the Exxon case, which is basically, Exxon said that all these bureaus that are run by all these unelected people, the real swamp, that they get to define their powers, the limit of their powers, everything else. So how Bannon said, what we looked at was, how did these people rule on cases related to Exxon? And if they were anti-Exxon, those are the ones we wanted. So that's how they got Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and ACB. Well, over the past 3 years, there have been 3 or 4 really big cases. West Virginia versus the EPA, the Jarkizi versus the SEC case. All of these have resulted in courts slapping down these bureaucracies and saying, no, you do not get to define yourself. You must go back to the legislature to get your powers, which is a big, big start. Now they are coming up. They just had a big decision on a web designer who didn't want to do homosexual or transoid kind of content, and they ruled in favor of the web designer. So I think slowly, you got to understand the courts are really slow, but slowly the courts are working their way through to this, and I think there will be a case in which they say, is Twitter or is Facebook, are they public um, um, what do I want to call it? Open to the public the way a cafe or a any other business is.
Public
And if
service.
so, they need to be available to everybody. Or are they private businesses and they get to determine who is and who is not allowed on their platform? Now, we had a big non-government breakthrough when Elon Musk got a hold of Twitter. It's vastly, I was reinstated on Twitter. They kicked me off in 2020 when I had 135,000 followers, and Musk brought me back, and he brought back a lot of other people. He's not all the way there yet, but he's far, far better than they were before. So there may be a role for regulation. What I would caution everybody is be careful, because it all depends on who the regulator, if they're under Biden, do you really want Biden running all these things? But let me just say one last thing to your audience. I think you're going to have a lot of Christians listening to this. Folks, do you pray for Bill Gates? Do you pray for Elon Musk? Do you pray for Larry Fink or Jamie Dimon of Citibank? Those people, we need to pray every day that they get a witness for the Lord Jesus. Because, Brad, just think of what our world would look like if 3 or 4 of those people came to Jesus. It's one of the biggest failings of the Christian church in the 20th century that we paid all this attention to the poor people. And yes, poor people need Jesus too. Solidarity with the poor and all that. Totally ignored Silicon Valley. Totally ignored Wall Street. We should have thousands of missionaries on Wall Street and in Silicon Valley, because you convert 10 of them, they'll help convert the world. And finally, I'll leave you with this word of hope. Remember, Paul was almost alone in Rome, and he changed the entire Roman Empire, which had government, economy, all the propaganda in the world. They had everything, and he still was able to change it with the word of truth.
Amen. Well, that's really the truth, is that if we believe God is who he said he is and represented himself as a human, as Christ, the impossible man, to do the impossible thing that's never been done in history and historically has been proven to at least a man who actually existed and did these things that he said he did, whereas none of the other religions have that. So, if you're going to choose one, choose the one that has existential reality that comports to historicity, as well as, of course, the idea of what happened when it was implemented in government. And what did it give? Did it give freedom, or did it give oppression? Did it give equality, or did it give destruction? No, it did the impossible. It's the only religion that stated there's no male or female, bond or free, Jew or Gentile. You're no longer identified by your gender. You respect it, but you're not identified. You're a child of God. You don't identify by your ethnicity. Respect it, honor it, but you're a child of God, and it has no class system. If you're rich, take care of the poor. If you're poor, don't envy. This is, if done, what it looks like to be one human race that can get along. It'll never happen as we're alive. We're sinners, but at least God gave us the marching orders. And I so appreciate guys like you who do the hard work and dive and learn these things, because not all of us are good at it, but we need to have somebody that can laymanize it and bring it out here so we can arm ourselves and study to show ourselves approved, so we have a chance to vote properly and to defend our faith like our lives depend on it, because it does. Folks, this is Larry Schweikart. You got to get his book, Patriot's History of the United States. I see the other one, Dragon Slayers, is very good. And he has curriculums for homeschooling or just for, if you just want to educate yourself at home, or your church wants to be more educated about cultural issues, which you should be. Your purpose as a Christian is to redeem the culture. Well, then you need to know what the culture is, what it's come from, what's different between Marxism. How does that not comport to Christianity? Why does it matter? Because it's a religion. You need to fight false religions. And that's where we're at. And that's what Stine Has Issues tries to do, is go beyond just talking about the other side, but seeing if we can actually bring some change. Who knows? But I'm trying. Political correctness, as I've told you, is cultural Marxism. It's evil. And if somebody says you're politically incorrect, I always say thank you for the compliment. Folks, this is where we're at. PC free is liberty. Speak truth at all times. Never, ever apologize for what you stand for. We do have the numbers. This is the militia of the mind, and we are have a chance if we believe that God will show us grace and mercy because we humble ourselves. Remember, It's God's Comic, Brad Stine, trying to bring the most interesting guests I can, because I'm stupid in so many ways. But I am doing one thing right. I'm just putting the woke back to sleep. See you next Monday.